My husband once told me Verona was too expensive for our anniversary. But then I saw his dinner reservation. Same restaurant, same table, just not with me. 17 years of marriage, shattered by one message. But instead of falling apart, I served them both the truth in the middle of their perfect date night. My name is Rachel Morgan. I'm 40, a senior lecturer in business strategy at a mid-sized university in Austin, Texas. For the past 17 years, I'd been married to Ethan, a corporate attorney at a prestigious law firm downtown. From the outside looking in, we were living the dream. A lovely craftsman home in a quiet neighborhood, dependable careers, beach vacations every summer, and a holiday card that could have been a commercial. But behind that curated perfection, the foundation had been crumbling for years. I just didn't want to face it. That night, Ethan was in the shower. The hum of water echoed through the walls like background static until it was interrupted by a soft ding. His phone, tossed on the nightstand without a second thought, lit up. I never snooped. I didn't need to. Trust was sacred to me. But sometimes, your gut speaks louder than your principles. I leaned over. The screen glowed with a message so simple, so cold, it sent a chill down my spine. Dinner for two confirmed at Verona. Friday, 7:45 p.m. Window seat. She'll love it. Verona. The most exclusive restaurant in Austin. Ethan and I had dreamed of going there on our 10-year anniversary, but he'd cancelled last minute, blaming an urgent meeting with a client from San Diego. Turns out, he just had different company in mind. I didn't intend to unlock the phone, but my hand moved faster than my thoughts. The passcode? Still our wedding date. I entered it, heart pounding, and just like that, the truth unfolded in front of me. Photos, messages, voice notes, a digital scrapbook of betrayal that went back nearly a year. Her name was Haley, blonde, young, worked in PR at Ethan's law firm. She looked like someone who never had to clean her own coffee maker. They texted. Constantly. No, obsessively. Morning started with, "Good morning, beautiful," and ended with, "I wish I was next to you." There were selfies, flirty snapshots, and then pictures from a 2-night business trip to Charleston. Ethan, shirtless, holding her in bed, his eyes lit up like he'd found his soulmate. The same eyes that used to look at me. I stood there, paralyzed, the kind of silence that rings, my fingers curled into fists. I wanted to scream, to break something, but I didn't. Instead, I swallowed the fire burning in my chest. "Hey babe, you seen my black tie?" Ethan called out from the bathroom, like nothing was wrong. Like he hadn't just lit a match under our marriage. I put the phone back exactly where it had been. "Top drawer," I replied, my voice flat, barely human. That night, I lay stiff in bed, facing away from him, listening to his calm, steady breathing while my world silently collapsed. Every late-night excuse, every shift in his energy, every unfamiliar cologne, it all made sense now, and I was done pretending. The next morning, I kissed him on the cheek like I always did. "Good luck at your 9 a.m. mediation," I said sweetly. He smiled, grabbed his briefcase, and walked out the door. He had no idea. I had already seen the reservation, and I was just getting started. As soon as the front door clicked shut behind Ethan, I picked up my phone with hands that no longer trembled. My first call wasn't to a friend or a lawyer, it was to human resources. I requested a 3-day leave from the university. Not because I needed time to cry. No, I needed time to plan. For 17 years, I had been the dependable wife, the rock, the safe place to land. But that version of me was gone. I sat at the kitchen table, my coffee long gone cold. The quiet in the house felt different now, like the silence before a storm. And inside that silence, something cold, sharp, and dangerously calm took root. I didn't want tears. I didn't want to throw plates or scream across the room, only to get that same robotic, condescending, "I'm sorry." No. If Ethan had planned a magical evening with Haley, he would get one. Just not the way he imagined. I opened his laptop, the one he never thought I'd touch. His calendar was as precise as a surgeon's notes. 7:45 p.m. Friday night, dinner at Verona. Window seat, pre-ordered wine. A romantic setup, as polished as his lies. I typed Haley's name into his firm's directory, Haley Walker, internal communications. Less than 5 minutes later, I found her social media. Predictable. Bright colors, filtered selfies, not a single trace of guilt. One more click. Ethan Walker, her husband. An architect at a high-end design firm downtown. His profile showed a man who loved coffee, jazz, and Sunday morning hikes. He had the kind of honest face you wanted to trust. I didn't know him, but I knew what he was about to feel. And he deserved to know, just not the way people usually find out. I couldn't just call a stranger and say, "Hey, your wife's been playing house with mine." A number I needed a way in. As a lecturer, I had one valuable card to play, inviting guest speakers. So I sat down and drafted the most polite, professional, and perfectly innocent email I'd ever written. Subject: Guest speaking opportunity. Dear Mr. Walker, my name is Rachel Morgan, and I teach project management at Austin Metro University. We're currently curating a lecture series on sustainable urban design, and your recent work on the Riverfront Rebuild project caught our attention. I'd love to meet and discuss the possibility of having you as a guest speaker. I've made a reservation for this Friday evening, 7:45 p.m. at Verona, to talk through the details over dinner. Looking forward to meeting you. Rachel Morgan. I hit send and waited. 2 hours later, a reply came back. Thank you, Miss Morgan. I'm honored by the invitation. Friday at 7:45 works perfectly. I look forward to it. I reread that line over and over, my heart a strange mix of nerves and sorrow. He didn't know what was coming. Not rage, not accusations. Just the truth, laid out like a mirror, too sharp to look away from. Now came the final step. I called Verona. Good evening. Thank you for calling Verona, the hostess chimed. Yes, I'd like to book a table for 2 this Friday evening, I said, my voice steady. Near the window, if available. And, ideally near a reservation, under the name Preston and Langley. We're potential collaborators and would like to observe their table discreetly. A half-truth. Enough to get what I wanted. Certainly, Miss Morgan. I'll seat you near them. Any wine or menu requests? Just a clear view, I replied with a soft smile. One she couldn't see. Everything was set. Friday night, I would sit just a few feet away from them. From the 2 people who thought their secret affair lived in the shadows. They had no idea their illusion was about to unravel, not with fury, but with clarity. I hung up the phone and sat in silence, my hands still in my lap. This wasn't revenge. It was exposure. And it was only the beginning. Everything was in place. No yelling. No dramatic confrontations. Just a quiet, devastating reveal timed with precision and delivered with grace. Ethan had always believed I was the gentle type. Predictable. Soft. He had no idea how wrong he was. And tonight? Tonight would rewrite the story he thought he knew. I arrived at Verona 20 minutes early, dressed not for seduction, but for war. The teal silk dress I wore shimmered under the dim lights, the same one Ethan once said was too bold for dinner parties. My hair was pinned in a soft, elegant twist, makeup natural, champagne-toned heels, clicking like a metronome of intent. Everything about me said elegance, but underneath, Strategy. I wasn't there to impress. I was there to expose. The hostess led me to our table, quiet, private, and perfectly positioned. From my seat, I had a clear view of the window-side reservation, the one Ethan and Haley had chosen for their little fairy tale evening. They hadn't arrived yet. I sat down, ordered a martini, and folded my hands on the table. My chest felt tight. Not from fear, but from the weight of a truth I had finally stopped running from. Then I heard it. "Miss Morgan?" I turned. There he was, Ethan Walker. Tall, composed, dressed in a charcoal button-down, just like his online photo. Except his eyes looked wearier, like life had been quietly pulling at the edges of him. Maybe from late nights at work. Maybe from the secret he didn't know he was about to watch unravel. "I'm glad you made it," I said, rising to shake his hand with a warm smile. "Thanks again for saying yes on such short notice." "The honor's mine," he replied. The subject matter really caught my attention. We sat. We talked. Urban design, public infrastructure, green architecture. I nodded, engaged, made eye contact. But part of me watched the entrance like a hawk circling its prey. And then, there they were. Ethan Prescott, wearing the grey blazer I'd given him for his birthday. Haley, draped in a crimson dress that clung like it had something to prove. Her heels clicked with confidence, her smile too bright, too sure of the world she thought she had in her pocket. They looked like the lead characters in some private romance movie. Laughing as he pulled out her chair, whispering across candles like love was theirs alone to keep. I tightened my grip on my glass. Not in anger, just control. Because I refused to let them break me in public. Ethan, my dinner guest, continued to speak kindly, completely unaware that my attention was split, that my eyes kept drifting toward the lovers a few tables away, that every inch of me was listening to two conversations at once. Then it happened. I watched my husband lean forward, pour the wine, his fingertips grazing Haley's wrist like it meant something. She tilted her head, flirtatious, earrings catching the candlelight like little betrayals made of diamonds. I turned slightly to grab my napkin. And that's when his eyes found mine. Ethan Prescott froze mid-laugh, the colour draining from his face. His wine glass wobbled, slipping slightly before the waiter caught it just in time. Haley followed his gaze. She turned, and she saw me. Before either of them could speak, the moment shattered like a glass dropped on marble. I turned to Ethan Walker with a soft smile, steadying my voice. "Excuse me for just a moment," I said gently. "I need to step away." He nodded politely, unaware that I was walking not toward a restroom, but toward the moment everything would come undone. Every step I took down that candlelit hallway, I rehearsed it all in my mind. No slaps. No screaming matches. This wasn't some soap opera. I didn't want chaos, I wanted clarity. Cold, stark, inescapable. And as if perfectly choreographed by fate, I exited the hallway just as Haley stepped out from the opposite side. She saw me. She froze. Wide eyes. Lips parted. Panic instantly replacing her smug composure. "You're Rachel, right?" she asked, her voice barely audible. I nodded slowly. "And you must be the woman playing footsie with my husband under the table, while your own husband is seated not 10 feet away." Her face drained of colour. "Please, not here," she whispered, eyes darting around. "Why not?" I tilted my head, voice even and calm. "Isn't this the perfect setting? Candlelight, soft music, a beautiful dinner. It's the ideal stage for someone like you." "Rachel, I didn't mean for—" "I don't need an explanation," I cut in sharply. "But Ethan deserves one, don't you think?" I turned my gaze toward our table. Ethan was looking around, clearly wondering where I had gone. He deserves to know who he's really sharing his life and his dinner with. Haley turned, maybe to escape, maybe to beg, but she didn't get far. Because Ethan Prescott, my husband, was already behind her. His face was ghostly pale, his lips parted, stunned. "Rachel?" he stammered. What are you doing here?" I turned fully, lifting my chin with quiet authority. "Ethan," I said calmly, loud enough for the tables nearby to catch every word. "Could you come over here for a second?" He approached slowly, confusion in his eyes. Haley stiffened beside him, like a child caught with stolen candy. I looked him square in the eyes. "Ethan," I said, "this is my husband, Ethan Prescott. And I believe you recognize Haley, your wife." For one breathless beat, the entire restaurant seemed to pause. Even the violinist faltered. Haley gasped, her hand covering her mouth as her eyes brimmed with tears. Prescott, my husband, took a single step back. Walker, her husband, turned toward his wife, pain flashing across his face like a spotlight. And me? I simply turned and walked away. But before I left them to their wreckage, I paused at the edge of their table. "Oh, and don't worry," I added over my shoulder, sweet as sugar. "Dinner's still on. Turns out your company card is pretty familiar to her." Then I walked out, heels clicking with dignity, spine straight, heart pounding like a drum of liberation. Behind me, untouched wine, 2 shattered illusions, and the truth, no longer hidden. When I returned to my table moments later, Ethan Walker was still standing, staring at his wife. She trembled in Prescott's arms. Mascara streaked down her cheeks. And for the first time in over a year, I felt light. Not because I hurt them, but because I finally stopped letting them hurt me. They both looked like they'd seen a ghost. All that warm candlelight romance from 5 minutes ago? Gone. Replaced by the harsh sting of reality slapping them awake. It was as if someone had yanked them straight out of a fairy tale and dropped them into a courtroom. I waved down the waiter with calm precision. "Excuse me," I said softly, but firmly. "Would it be possible to move us to a private room? And could you please combine our table with the one under Prescott?" The waiter hesitated, eyes darting between me and the scene unfolding in real time. But professionalism won out. "I'll take care of it right away, ma'am." Within minutes, we were ushered into a quiet, candle-lit private room. Table for 4, quiet enough to hear every breath, every heartbeat. I sat first. Ethan Walker took the seat beside me. Across from us, Ethan Prescott and Haley sat like students caught red-handed cheating on their final exam. No one moved. No sound of plates or glasses. Only the distant hum of jazz and the suffocating weight of what was coming. Prescott broke first. "Rachel, I don't even know where to begin." "Start with Tuesday," I replied, cool and direct, as I poured myself a glass of water. "That's when your phone lit up, and I saw the reservation, confirmation." Both of them went rigid. Haley stared at the floor like it might save her. Prescott opened his mouth, but I raised a hand to cut him off. "I don't need a speech. I read everything, Prescott. Every message, every photo, every secret trip to Charleston. Don't bother painting it prettier than it was." Haley whispered, almost inaudibly, "I'm sorry." I turned to Ethan Walker, my voice low but clear. "He's my husband, and she's your wife. The least we're owed tonight is the truth," spoken out loud. Walker sat frozen, eyes locked on Haley. His voice, when it came, was quiet, shaking slightly with rage and heartbreak. "So what now, Haley? You going to tell me it was just a mistake? A phase? Some poetic search for yourself that led you straight into another man's bed?" She shook her head as tears welled. "I didn't mean for it to get this far. It started, I don't know, as a joke. I felt invisible at home. Prescott, he listened. He saw me. Walker's hands curled into fists on the table. I saw you too, he said, voice cracking. I spent whole weekends redesigning your office because you said your workspace didn't inspire you. I stayed up with your deadlines. I cheered for your wins. I believed in you. Prescott turned to me then. His voice was trembling now. Rachel, I know I failed. I made the biggest mistake of my life, but please, don't let this be how we end. I smiled. Not kindly. Not bitterly. It was the kind of smile that comes after a storm, when there's nothing left to fear, nothing left to hide. Prescott, I said slowly. This isn't the end. You think this is the end? I leaned forward, my voice low and firm. But the end started long ago, when you chose her over us, over and over again. When you let me come home to your lies, smile through your deception, and still had the audacity to kiss me goodnight like you deserved it. Prescott's mouth opened, but no words came. Haley sobbed into her napkin. Ethan Walker looked at her like he didn't recognize the woman in front of him anymore. And me? I sat there, steady, unmoved, ready for whatever came next. Because this wasn't weakness. This was the reckoning. This started the moment you looked at Haley the way you used to look at me. I said, my voice even, almost too calm. That's when you decided our wedding vows were just words, not promises. Prescott looked down, ashamed. Haley turned away, her cheeks streaked with tears, lips trembling under the weight of the truth. I reached into my clutch and pulled out a small hotel keycard, placed it gently on the table between us. I'll be staying at the Celeste Hotel across the street, I said. I already booked a suite. I glanced at Prescott. Don't worry, you're welcome to go back to the house, if you still have the nerve. He panicked. Rachel, please don't do this. I'll do anything, just give me a chance to fix this. I shook my head slowly. You can't fix a home when the foundation's already rotted through. I rose from my seat, smoothing the folds of my dress. I used to be the kind of woman who forgave everything, who believed people change just because they said sorry. But now I know, sometimes, forgiveness is just betrayal of yourself. Then I turned to Ethan Walker, still seated beside me, hands clenched, heart cracked open. I'm truly sorry you had to learn this way. He nodded once, not in anger, but in acknowledgement. Thank you, he whispered. It hurts, but I needed to know. I looked across the table one last time, at the people who had shattered something they didn't build. I wish you both luck, I said clearly. Not because I forgive you, but because one day the choices you made tonight will find their way back to you. And with that, I turned and walked out. The moment the door to the private dining room clicked shut behind me, the world felt different, quieter, colder, but also lighter. My heels struck the pavement outside Verona, each step echoing through the upscale district like a closing chapter. In my hand was a clutch. Inside it, a single key to room 1203, overlooking the city skyline. At the front desk of the Celeste, the receptionist greeted me with a professional smile and handed me the keycard. I didn't say a word. I just nodded. Inside the suite, I shut the door, locked it, kicked off my heels, and walked barefoot to the giant floor-to-ceiling window. Outside, the lights of downtown Austin glowed amber and gold, reflected back against the glass. My silhouette stared back at me, not as someone's wife, not as someone abandoned, but just me, finally visible, finally real. I sat on the edge of the bed, feeling the silence press against my skin. Then I cried. Not the delicate, cinematic kind. Not the dignified tear-down-the-cheek style. It was ugly, gut-wrenching, loud. I cried for 17 years of being invisible. For every quiet dinner alone. For every bouquet that masked a lie. For every night I convinced myself that being tolerated was love. I cried until my lungs burned and my throat ached. I don't know how long I stayed like that, clutching a pillow, eyes swollen and red. But I know I was still sitting there when a knock came at the door. My breath caught. Slowly, I rose. My bare feet silent on the hardwood floor as I walked to the door. I leaned in and looked through the peephole. It was Ethan Walker. I peered through the peephole and saw him standing there, shoulders slightly hunched under a long coat, his hair tousled by the wind, the exhaustion of the evening carved into the lines of his face. "I'm sorry to show up like this," he said quietly. "I didn't know where else to go." I didn't speak. Just opened the door a little wider. "Come in." We sat in the 2 armchairs by the window, bathed in the soft glow of the city. Outside, traffic rolled by, like nothing had happened, like the world hadn't just crumbled beneath our feet. Ethan stared out the window in silence for a long time before speaking. "I still don't get it," he finally said. "How you knew, how you sat through that dinner, like none of it broke you." I gave a quiet laugh. Tired, but genuine. "I wasn't sitting still," I said. "I was waiting for the right moment. Some truths, if you leave them to other people, they lose their weight. I wanted them to feel it, not just hear it." He nodded slowly, his eyes dark with thought. "Thank you," he said, "for not letting me keep living in that lie." We talked like strangers who had bled from the same wound. He told me Haley had been the first person to ever believe in his craziest designs, the one who made him feel understood when his ideas scared even his own firm. And I told him about Prescott, about the rainy day when he slipped a ring on my finger and promised he'd never lose his way. Turns out, we were both wrong about the people we trusted most. "I think I'm going to file," I said, staring into my untouched glass of water. "For divorce." Ethan didn't look shocked, just sad. "I don't think I can live with someone who can pretend that well," he said softly. "Not after tonight." I looked him in the eyes, my voice steady. "I'm not angry at Prescott anymore. Not like I was. Anger fades. But if there's one thing I've learned, one thing I'll never forget, it's this. I won't stay in any relationship that chips away at my self-worth, one silent day at a time." Ethan didn't say anything for a moment. Then, quietly, he said, "You're stronger than I thought." I shook my head. I'm just the last one willing to admit the truth out loud. That night, Ethan didn't go home. He booked a separate room down the hall. Not out of romance. Not out of anything unsaid. Just respect. Before he left my suite, he paused at the door and turned back. "If you ever need someone to talk to, or just sit with, I'm here." I gave a small nod. "Thank you, Ethan. Tonight, I think you understood me better than my own husband has in over 10 years. After he left, I stood silently by the door, watching his figure fade down the long hotel hallway. In that moment, I didn't feel powerful, but I felt something else. Lighter. As if I had finally set down a suitcase full of stones I'd been dragging behind me for years. Prescott could beg. He could make promises. He could write apology letters a mile long. But my heart had already shut its doors the moment I saw how he looked at Haley, with the same eyes he used to look at me. And I didn't need permission to move on. I would move forward, alone if I had to, on the same 2 feet that had carried me through every storm. The next morning, I checked out of the Celeste Hotel while the city was still wrapped in morning fog. I returned to the house we'd shared for 17 years, not to cling to the past, but to start clearing out the remains of a marriage that had quietly died long ago. Prescott was already there, waiting in the living room. His shirt was half-buttoned, his hair a mess, his eyes red and hollow. He shot up the second I stepped through the door. "Rachel, we need to talk," he said, his voice cracking like it had been rehearsed all night. I set my purse down on the entry table. Calm. Then talk. I know I messed up. I know I betrayed you, and I won't even try to justify it, he said. But I still believe we can come back from this. I'll do whatever it takes. Therapy. Honesty. I'll cut Haley out completely. I already told her. She left the city, I said, cutting him off. Prescott froze. What? I heard from one of her co-workers. Haley quit her job and moved back to Santa Barbara this morning. Apparently, she couldn't handle the fact that the office found out. He sank back into the couch, burying his head in his hands. You told everyone? Not out of revenge, I said evenly, but because I refused to live in the shadows anymore. I called your mother, Mark, Jenna, even your college buddies, the ones you always tried to impress. And I told them everything. That you cheated on me for almost a year, that you lied about business meetings, wrote fake emails, and kissed another woman while I stood in our kitchen cooking dinner, waiting for you to come home. Prescott shook his head, his eyes wide with panic. You've ruined my reputation. Do you even understand what my company will think? What people will say? I laughed, cold and dry. You're more worried about your image than your marriage. So let me make something clear. You destroyed your reputation, not me. I just stopped protecting the mask you worked so hard to wear. He stepped toward me, reaching out. Rachel, please, don't do this. I love you. I do. I stepped back. Love doesn't live in lies, Prescott. If you loved me, you wouldn't have called someone else baby, while still sleeping beside me every night pretending nothing was wrong. He dropped to the floor, shoulders shaking. She meant nothing. It was a mistake. No, Prescott, I said, voice steady. It was a string of choices. Every text, every reservation. Every time you walked out that door, with a lie on your lips, you had a chance to stop. But you didn't. And now? Neither will I. His voice cracked. If you leave, you'll ruin my life. I looked straight at him. Number. I'll save mine. The week that followed was a storm of attempts, calls, texts, flowers delivered to campus, even a 4-page email detailing his emotional breakthrough since that dinner. I never replied. I'd heard enough apologies in this lifetime. Now, I let the silence speak for me. I hired a lawyer, filed for divorce. 3 weeks later, a friend messaged me. She'd seen Prescott and Haley at a quiet cafe in the suburbs. They didn't look radiant anymore. 2 days later, his final message appeared on my screen. I tried to move on with her, but there's nothing there. She doesn't smile at me anymore, and I don't see you in her eyes. I stared at it for a moment, then locked my phone and let the silence answer for me. I didn't owe him a reply. A few days after that, he vanished from the digital world, deleted every social account, scrubbed clean like a man ashamed of his own reflection. Then came the news. He had stepped down from the board, citing personal reasons. This man who once breathed for attention, who wore his image like armor, was now forced to sit alone with what he'd become. And this time, there was no mask left to hide behind. Spring arrived early that year. I noticed it one quiet Saturday morning, as golden light spilled through the windows of my new apartment, painting long, honeyed streaks across the dark wood floors. I was pouring coffee when my phone buzzed. Ethan, coffee at Tanner's? No small talk, no pretense, just that. I glanced at the clock. 9:12 a.m. Give me 15 minutes, I texted back, smiling to myself. Since that night at Verona, Ethan and I, once strangers bound only by shared betrayal, had never truly gone separate ways. It started with simple check-ins, then weekend coffees. No pressure. No illusions. No promises to fix one another. Just two people who had been gutted by love and were learning to breathe again in the wreckage. That morning, he was already at our usual table when I arrived. Notebook open, 2 lattes waiting. "You knew my order again," I said, sliding into the seat across from him. He smiled, pushing the cup toward me. "I'm starting to think I might be the only one who ever bothered to remember what you like." I took a sip. Prescott got my coffee wrong for 17 straight years. We laughed. Not bitter, not broken, just free. "How have you been?" I asked, my voice gentler than before. He exhaled, like he'd been holding the words in all week. "Divorce finalized last Friday," he said, nodding as if to anchor it in reality. "Haley didn't have much to say. Just a note. Sorry for making you lose faith in love." I looked at him. "And did you?" I asked. He paused, looked me in the eye, and then, slowly, he shook his head. "No," he said, "because I'm learning to believe again. But not in words. Not in forers or perfect promises. I'm learning to believe in the small, quiet things that don't lie." His answer sat between us like truth, unshakable, raw, and unpolished. We didn't need to fill the silence after that. It wasn't empty. It was safe. In that stillness, I realized we weren't rushing toward a new love or trying to rewrite the past. We were just 2 people walking forward, side by side, on solid ground for the first time. And maybe, just maybe, that was the beginning of something real. The months that followed were, surprisingly, peaceful. Rare, quiet peace. I went back to teaching, signed up for a weekend photography course, and for the first time in years, I lived a life that didn't revolve around being someone's wife. Ethan Walker, in the meantime, continued running his design firm, but he never missed a single one of my student seminars. Not once. Every time he stood at the front of the lecture hall, talking about design, about structure and soul, about how architecture can be both human and honest, I felt something spark again inside me. Not romantic. Not rushed. Just inspired. One afternoon after class, I invited him over to my new place. It was small, quiet, full of light and trailing green plants, alive, thriving. We ate pizza on the balcony, watching the skyline glitter in the distance. "Do you think we're changing?" I asked, pulling a knit blanket over my lap. He turned to me, smile soft. "No," he said. "I think we're finally returning to who we always were." I didn't answer, but the words sat in my chest like a truth I didn't know I needed to hear. One early summer night, after an open-air concert by the river, we were walking slowly, hand brushing hand, when Ethan suddenly stopped. "Rachel," he said, voice serious but gentle, "I'm not in a rush. I'd never push you into something before you're ready. But if, someday, you want to try again." He paused, eyes locked on mine. Not marriage, not labels, just something real, built on trust, on truth. No lies, no masks, just us. I looked at him, and what I saw wasn't pressure or need. It was patience. It was sincerity. "I'm not ready to love again the old way," I said, voice quiet. "But if love means what you just described, friendship, honesty, no hiding, then maybe I've already started without realizing it." Ethan didn't respond with words. He just reached for my hand, gently. No urgency, no promises. And somehow, in that simple gesture, I knew if someone was going to help me write the next chapter of my life, it was going to be him. Under the amber glow of string lights and the hush of river wind, I stepped into something new. Not perfect, not cinematic, but real. And this time, I wouldn't have to sacrifice myself to keep it. Because he, too, had been shattered. And now we were both building again, from the same broken pieces. Exactly 1 year after that night at Verona, I received an invitation. Professor Martha Benson, my PhD advisor, my mentor, was retiring. The celebration would be held at Hotel Lire, as elegant and understated as she'd always been. I arrived early, wearing a navy dress and my mother's pearl earrings. In my hand, a gift-wrapped first edition copy of a book she'd once mentioned loving. I expected nothing more than a quiet evening of conversation, hugs, and nostalgia. But as I stepped into the ballroom, my breath caught. Prescott. He stood near the wine table. Thinner, a touch of grey at the temples. Still well-groomed, but without the swagger that used to announce him before he ever said a word. He turned, saw me, and time paused for just a beat. Then he walked over, wine glass in hand. "Rachel," he said, voice rougher now. "Worn. I didn't think you'd come." "I didn't think I'd see you here either," I replied, my tone neutral. He gave a faint smile. "Professor Benson, she's the only one still willing to talk to me after everything." He stared at me for a long, quiet moment, as if searching for a line that wouldn't fall apart on his tongue. Finally, he exhaled. "I owe you an apology, a real one. Not because you need to hear it, but because I need to say it." I stayed silent. When everything fell apart, I lost more than I ever expected. Not just my reputation, not the board seats or the partnerships, but myself, my self-respect. He looked down. I tried to make it work with Haley for a while, but it unraveled faster than what I destroyed with you. I looked at him. No anger, no resentment, only the kind of stillness you feel when you finally accept that someone no longer has a place in your story. He wasn't my pain anymore, just part of the past. "I hope you find peace," I said, my voice low but sincere. He nodded slowly. "And you?" he asked. "Are you okay?" "Yes," I answered, without a flicker of doubt. "I'm rebuilding, on my own terms, and I'm not doing it alone." Right then, Ethan Walker stepped into the ballroom. Wearing a charcoal button-down and a quiet, confident smile, the same smile I once joked was the light at the end of the tunnel. Prescott followed my gaze, and when he understood, he gave a slow, knowing nod. "He's a good man," he said quietly. "You deserve a fresh start." I placed my hand over my chest, where there had once been a hollow wreckage, now steady again, whole again. "Thank you," I said genuinely. "And so do you. Just don't start again until you're truly ready. Not to fill a void, not to prove a point, and not at the cost of someone else." He stepped back, as if giving me permission, not just to leave, but to move on. That night, Ethan and I sat side by side at the celebration. We laughed with old colleagues, took photos with my former students, and shared a slow, quiet dance beneath a canopy of golden light. No promises, no grand speeches, just presence. Just two people who had once been broken, now rebuilding something honest, not from scratch, but from the cracks, healed by time, patience, and truth. As we left the party, I took Ethan's hand in mine, looked up at the stars overhead. "You know," I said softly, "there was a time I thought betrayal was the end." He gently squeezed my hand. "And now?" he asked. "Now," I smiled. "I think it was just the break I needed. A pause, so I could turn toward a better path." We walked on, shoulder to shoulder, never once looking back. Because the past had been closed with forgiveness, the present was filled with trust, and the future, it was quietly unfolding, right there in the hand I held. 1 year after the night everything fell apart, I was no longer the woman who sacrificed her soul to keep a broken marriage alive. Now, I am Rachel Morgan. Strong, steady, and free. I didn't just survive betrayal. I rebuilt from it. I didn't just walk away. I walked towards something better. Because I learned the most important truth of all. Loving someone shouldn't mean losing yourself. And healing doesn't wait for permission. It begins the moment you choose you. What about you? Do you think Rachel made the right choice? Was she too strong? Or just strong enough to protect her dignity? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful, true life stories.